Welcome to Bandit's Keep. I'm Daniel. This one's for the players. So this week we're going to talk about some player advice. I've talked to a few people over the years that I've been doing this, years now, I guess, and they often say, so much advice on YouTube and so many videos, with the exception of character builds, are aimed at DMs. Like, there's not a whole lot of videos out there about playing and how to be a player and such. And I had the great honor of being on Hexed Press last week, and Todd ran me through a little bit of an adventure called Hole in the Oak for OSE. The purpose of that was, I think actually for DMs, he was trying to show the way that the procedures work in BX or OSE. And he wanted to show it with the player. So I got a chance to play a group of characters. But it made me think, what do I do as a player? And what can I talk about in a video, this one, that might help players that are new to the old school way of playing? Maybe you've come from different systems, maybe you haven't played in a while, or maybe you just want to hear what other people do. So that's what this video is about. So this is basically what I do as a player. And I used to joke, I'm a terrible player, but actually I think I'm the kind of player I want in my group. That is to say, I am the type of player I want in my group. And that's a good question to ask yourself. When you're in somebody else's game, if you are a GM, would you like yourself as a player? And, again, you might run a completely different type of game, so it might be different, right? If you're running an investigative game, but you're playing in a silly game, like Toon or something. Is Toon silly? I don't know. I've never played it, but I know you play cartoons. But anyways, you want to try to be the best player you can. I think all people want to be the best player they can, but when you're running the game, you also have that little extra bit that you can think, oh, would I enjoy this? Like, I've heard many people say it, I've said it myself, some of my best DM advice comes from me playing in other games as a player and not enjoying what the DM did. Same thing here. Some of the best player advice comes from looking at great players and looking at players that maybe weren't so fun to play with and seeing what could be changed. All right, so I'm going to kind of break down, and I'll put a link, by the way, but I'm going to break down the part of the adventure I did with Todd, and I'll give you my kind of, this is almost like the director's commentary, right, of what I was thinking and what was going on. So if you watch that, you'll get an idea, or, that way you'll have an idea of what I was thinking. I did try to say as much as I could out loud then, but this hopefully will help. So number one, we're just starting at the location, because this is going to be a quick little thing, but we had rumors. And whenever you have rumors or a lore dump, or anything like that from a dungeon master when you're first starting an adventure, there's going to be a lot to take in. What I generally do is I make quick notes of words and statements that stick out to me. Like, for instance, I started typing digitally and then I deleted the note and then I went to physical because it actually works better for me. So in the rumors, though, there was a rumor about some emeralds. There was a rumor about a wizard with a golem. And there was a couple other things I thought were interesting to different characters because, again, I was running a group of characters. And this is great because when you have this, so I said, oh, there's rumor that there's a bunch of emeralds down here. The dwarf who I had assigned as the leader of my group, I was like, they're very much into this. So whatever we do in the game is going to lead towards the idea that they're trying to get these emeralds. At one point in the game, we saw a green glow off in one direction. So where did we go? Towards the green glow, because I didn't have to think too long about it. I knew we're looking for emeralds. So it's good to have some kind of an idea. Hopefully your dungeon master is giving you some kind of rumors or some kind of background so you know what you're looking for. So if you get to an intersection or you get to a space where you're thinking, what would my character do? Think about your ultimate goal. What is the character here to do? And if it's to rescue somebody, if it's to find a certain treasure, if it's to map the place, whatever it is, make a decision based on that. So in my case, follow the emeralds. So one thing we want to do as players in an old school game is consider resources. So when you are making your characters, obviously people often make characters individually, especially if you're running a first time group together, right? Do a quick inventory of what everybody's got. Who has rope? Who has spikes? Who has torches? Who has oil? Get an idea of what you've got so you know what you can leave behind or sacrifice if need be. So in this case, I had 6 characters, 4 of them had rope. So when we got to the location, which was basically a shaft that we could climb down, that clearly had a way we could climb down, I still tied a rope to the outside of the tree and dropped it down next to there. Because I'm thinking to myself, we've never been here before. This could be trapped. There could be a lot of things. It could be gone when we get back. So dropping my own rope is basically a safety net, right? So take the time to do that kind of stuff. Before you enter into the dungeon, when the DM says you're at the door to the dungeon, don't just walk in. Think about, say, okay, we want to check the area. Is there any other entrances around? Is there anything over here? So get a feel for what's there so you don't walk through the door and have it slam behind you with a bunch of goblins, locking you in there. Get a feel. As soon as the game starts, as soon as that dungeon master starts making that first description, you are there. There's no taking 2 steps back. So you're there in the moment and you're thinking, what am I going to do? I'm at this location. So I tied a rope around the tree. We climbed down. Turns out it wasn't really a big deal. But the ground down here was soft and had lots of tracks. So immediately we wanted to investigate those, of course. Before I jump into that though, let's talk about marching order. Discuss this up front with the other players before the actual game starts. I find that works so much better than the DM having to go, who's where? Right away, just establish. You can, if you're playing in person, I find it nice to put minis down on the table in the order that people are. Some people just say you're in the order around the table that you are. Some people draw up different, marching orders depending on, 2 wide, 1 wide, whatever. It comes down to your group's culture, but definitely have an idea. Because what we want, especially if we're running Theater of the Mind, is for people to know where things are. Also, if you're running on a VTT, you're going to want to know who's going where. And in an old school game, the obvious thing might be, let me scroll back, send the thief first. They can move silent. The thief is the worst person to be in the front of the group. You want to put people in the front of the group that have infravision, which is like dark vision. You want to put people in the front of the group that can wear heavy armor. Your thief, your magic user, they should be in the middle, right? So what I did was I had an elf and a dwarf, both in chainmail armor. They took the first rank. They are armored. They can see in the dark. In the middle, we put the torches. That way they can't, an enemy can't immediately try to take out somebody in the front rank and you lose your torch, right? You leave that with the magic user and the thief. The thief's going to stay back unless you get to something like a chest where they need to pick a lock, right? They don't need to be in front all the time. In the back, make sure you put somebody in the back that has some plate mail armor. So we basically, or chain or whatever, we basically made our ranks. Another thing you want to talk about right when you very first start off, and I've heard people talk about this, I don't recommend saying, DM, here's the list. This is what we do at every door. And then just, when we get to the door, we're doing procedure 1. I don't love that. That takes me out. I'm not role playing at that point, but it's good to discuss. Like currently I'm in a alien game, and what we do, we have a system now. We've now in the second session where, okay, I'm on Overwatch. I'm at this door. He opens the door. She stands back over here. We have a plan. So whenever we get to a door, we're just doing our thing, but we're actually doing it. We're not just saying these are the things we do. So same thing here. I was trying to set up a process, right? We got to certain rooms. Certain people would step ahead, like the thief to sneak if they could be more quiet, or the magic user to read something that was magical, right? So we basically have our group and we know who's doing what. We get to a door, these people stand here, they stand there. And again, you can change it, but this way, when you get to a door and the DM goes, what do you do? Everybody just right away goes, my character goes over here, I hold the door, I take my bow out, and you got it down. I also want to take a second to talk about mapping. So here's my map, by the way. Spoiler for Hole in the Oak. Okay? You don't need a fancy map. Just circles, little room things. Doesn't have to be 100% perfect unless you're running a game. Like if you're doing a mega dungeon, then you want to have an actual person that you might call the mapper. But I recommend that every single person that can at least keeps some kind of basic map. This helps you remember things. Like my map has my notes on it. So sandy ground here, green light, roots hanging down. I'm looking at my notes. Like this is all on the map, right? I don't need to keep a totally separate set. I can look at this map and know where things are. Keep some kind of basic map. It'll make your life a lot easier. All right, let's take a second to talk about combat, because obviously if we're doing dungeon crawling or anything, we may eventually run into a situation where there's going to be combat. Because these types of games are generally side-based initiative, and I've talked about this before and they're phased, try to work as a team. Try to use tactics. Know who has the heavy metal armor that can block doorways. Know who has bows to get in position. Know how to get that magic user out of the combat as quickly as possible so they don't go down with no armor on, right? Get the thief behind people for your backstab. Know these techniques so that you can get people into positions so you can outsmart the enemy. What you want in combat is it to be either fast or not at all. And fast meaning you're going to win. If you don't think you can take them out quickly, if there's 5 guys exactly armored just like you standing across from you, you should run. assuming there's 5 of you. If there's 3 guys and you have the jump on them with surprise and you have missile weapons and cover and you can get the thief behind one of them and you have a thief sleep spell, yeah, that's the combat you want to have. Keep in mind, everything should be fought dirty, effectively. Fight to win. So finally, I want to talk a little bit about thinking outside the box. This is the kind of stuff that you see in like old school primers. And I think it's really important to remember that because a lot of these old school games, OSE in this case, do not have skill checks, what you've got to do is consider, how can I solve a problem? That is to say, I'll give a couple of examples from this, which I don't think should be too spoilery. We came to an intersection. It was, again, sandy ground. There was a lot of footprints going in every direction. We looked, DM decided we could not tell how old they were, when people came and went. It was just too much. So what does that tell us? It's a high traffic area. Interesting. Number 2, there was a glove there. And, well, what's a glove, right? What could that tell us? The first thing I said was, is it just flat or is it pointing? Does it seem to be in, going in a certain direction? Like, what is about the glove? Because that's the kind of thing that if I was a player character, I might leave a glove pointing in a direction to tell me where to go, because we want to keep track of where we're going. Imagine a single character lost in a maze that can't map because it's not practical. They're going to leave clues for themselves. They're going to put nicks in there's roots down there, nicks in the roots. They're going to use chalk if it's in a dungeon like that. They're going to mark their way. So I thought immediately the glove is some kind of marker. Secondly, it might have been a trap. So what did we do? We don't just go, well, we search for traps. I took my spear and everybody backed up and I, messed with the glove. Turns out it was nothing. Fine. Now we're thinking, you know what? We're about to go down one of these passageways. There's 4 ways in and out. It was a 4-way intersection. I want to know how traffic this place is, since we don't know how old the footprints are. We don't know what's around here. So let's do something. We all move to one corridor, and then the character with the 10-foot pole, put it across the ground, and like a Etch-a-Sketch, right? Just kind of cleaned it off so there was no more footprints, completely flat. Not because we were necessarily hiding our progress, although it would do that, but because when we came back to that intersection, if there were footprints there, we could tell which direction they came from, possibly how many there were, and where they were going. These are the kind of out-of-the-box things that work really well in these games that don't have fixed skill systems. Just think of something clever and do it. Don't be afraid of failing. Throw those switches, pick up the gloves, look in the mirror, but be careful. This is the kind of things we want to do. Follow the sounds or run away from the sounds. Set up ambushes, put out your torches if you hear somebody coming. Do the creative things to give yourself the edge. What's the worst case scenario? You've got to run? Well, that's fine. Sometimes you got to run. Hopefully that was helpful. If you are a player and you have any more questions, please do write them in the comments below and I'll do my best to answer them. If you have advice for players, whether you're a player or a GM, write it in the comment below. I would love to hear your top idea or top thing that you'd take away, players that you'd love to have at your table, or things you've done as a player that just really worked. Simple things, please, although complex things can be fun too, I guess. Anyways, make a comment below if you're interested in being part of that conversation. Speaking of being part of the conversation, keep in mind the description holds the link to my Discord server where you can sign up over there, and also to my Patreon if you want to support the channel. I'll talk to you soon.